Now, student loans currently affect over 44 million Americans across the country and actually has a very, very large negative impact on the economy, especially when it comes to millennials who have most of that student loan debt. Now, there's been a lot of ideas floated around on how to prevent amassing that debt. Now, Bernie Sanders, for example, has a free college tuition plan. Now, that would make public colleges and universities tuition free to attend. That would be great at not actually creating more additional student loan debt. Now, under President Barack Obama, we also had 2 years of free community college. That's also a good way to prevent racking up so much debt, right? However, we've had very little discussion over what happens to the millions of people who already have that student loan debt. Again, Bernie Sanders talked about allowing borrowers to refinance at lower interest rates. The same thing with Elizabeth Warren. She, of course, has taken the government to task for basically making money off students through student loan interest, right? However, maybe the best solution to this problem isn't just prevention. Yes, that's a huge, huge part of it. However, maybe the best idea for the people who are suffering under student loan debt is just to wipe it all out together. Oh, but Jeff, that's crazy. Crazy. I mean, you guys, they borrowed the money. They knew what they were getting into. They borrowed that money. They should have to pay it back. Well, what if I told you that in canceling this debt, you would actually grow the economy as a whole? And that would actually be very significant. Now, that's what a new study from a group of economists at the Levy Economics Institute of Bard College is proposing. They find that there would actually be significant benefits if the federal government were to basically forgive all existing student loan debt. Now, Marshall Steinbaum, fellow and research director at the Roosevelt Institute and co-author of the report, said, quote, "The idea of canceling student debt is not some crazy idea out of left field, but is actually something that could be done, and done in a way that has a moderately positive economic impact." Now, of course, the first question that comes to people's mind is, yeah, but isn't that expensive? How are you going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for this? America's broke. We just can't go and forgive all this student loan debt. Why not? I mean, again, the federal government is the primary lender of student loans. They can just hit a button and make that debt disappear. That's it. And like I said before, that might equal some good things for the economy. Now, let me point out what those good things actually are. The report finds that canceling all student debt would likely lead to an increase of U.S. GDP between $861 billion and $1,083 billion over the course of 10 years. It would also lead to an increase of 1.18 to 1.55 million additional new jobs over the same period. So here you would have more economic growth and more jobs being created. That's because when you free up people from mountains of student loan debt, you actually have people that go out and they take risks and they start businesses and they create jobs. And of course, that job or those jobs lead to more economic growth. Now, they compare this, interestingly enough, in this report to the economic growth projections of the Trump tax cuts. So let's take a look at that. But first, we have a quote here. They said that what our report shows is that you can get greater macroeconomics impact, bigger bang for the buck, and that student debt cancellation has about half the budgetary effect of the Trump's tax cuts. The report finds that total loan forgiveness would cost the United States approximately $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years, a number that is almost exactly the same as what the CBO recently projected the Republican new tax bill would cost. So, in the money that we just handed the rich and 1% in tax cuts, which, by the way, 83% of that goes to the top 1%, is actually more than what it would take to wipe out everybody's federal student loan debt, grow the economy, and add 1.5 million jobs. They say that this would have a more positive impact on the economy than the tax cuts. Again, they said, this is Stephanie Kelton, Stony Brook University professor of public policy and economics, saying, quote, the GOP tax bill is going to add $1.5 trillion to deficits over the next 10 years. What else could we do? Canceling student loan debt was just about perfect when it comes in, or because it comes in at about $1.4 trillion, and it's almost 6 of 1, half a dozen of the other in terms of the price tag. So she's basically saying, and she was also a co-author in the study, that if lawmakers can give $1.5 trillion in tax cuts to the rich and corporations, why can't we do something to actually help people in the economy that are struggling with student loan debt? She says that what the report shows is that you can get a greater macroeconomic impact, and I believe I said that already, bigger bang for the buck. Yeah, I said that quote already from Kelton, but think about it this way, right? The rich already have all this money. They already had money before you gave them $1.5 trillion worth of tax cuts. American corporations were sitting on $2 trillion worth of cash already. Now, they weren't using it to create new jobs. They weren't using it to boost wages. What they were using it is to buy back their own stock and inflate their stock prices. Yeah, that helps the executives. That helps the people at the top. That helps the shareholders and the CEOs. But it doesn't help the workers. Workers haven't gotten a raise, and of course that makes them rage. They haven't gotten a raise in 30 years. So it's been a long time. And so, hey, maybe we should actually do something to help the workers. And a lot of these workers right now are people that are loaded with student loan debt, that are using most of their money that they get from these wages to go and pay off that debt. Now, on the tax cuts, only 2% of Americans actually report any sort of benefit, whether it be bonuses or rising wages from that. And that shows how it's not actually going to trickle down. In fact, a lot of the companies who are getting these tax cuts are saving billions of dollars. While they're doing that, they're actually also laying people off. Carrier, Walmart, Kimberly-Clark, Harley-Davidson, they're leaving because, again, they have no demand. There is less demand because people have less money. What meager wages people are actually getting, and especially millennials, the millennial generation, most of it goes to debt servicing and rent. We have a big problem with housing prices that are too high, rents that are too high. You know, hey, man, that McMillan guy that was running in New York, the rent is too high party, that guy was absolutely right. The rent is too damn high. And not only that, like I said, all the money that goes into student loan servicing, that's money that could be freed up, that could go back into the economy. And so, look, we could actually help workers. We could actually help create demand if we actually eliminate the debt, this gigantic burden of debt off people's backs. I mean, look, let me use Kimberly-Clark as an example, right? Kimberly-Clark closing on thousands of jobs. Why? Again, no demand, because what they sell is mostly baby products, diapers, wipes, things like that. Well, millennials aren't having kids. What's one of the reasons that millennials aren't having children, other than, of course, overpopulation and, I think, concerns about the environment? Student loan debt. They don't have the money to be able to afford to have families, right? People can't afford houses or kids because of that debt. I mean, why aren't we buying diamonds? Debt. Why aren't we eating at Applebee's or creating startup businesses? Again, it's that debt. Maybe if you remove that debt, we could actually start to participate in a big way into the economy. And that's why these projections that if you eliminate that debt, that you would have economic growth and that you would create more jobs. That would be the solution. We could actually do it. Now, unfortunately, the administration is actually not going in that direction. In fact, the administration, especially when it comes to education, Betsy DeVos is our education secretary, which is a farce. They're far more interested. She is far more interested in helping for-profit colleges who get these student loans, deregulating them, and making sure that they can take more federal money and giving you less education. So the Republicans are, of course, not interested in student loan forgiveness. And the Democrats are unfortunately too weak to propose such a radical idea as canceling all the student loan debt, which, by the way, is more than credit card debt. It's $1.4 trillion. Now, one more finding, and this adds a racial angle to it. The report found that canceling student loan debt could attenuate some long-standing racial disparities in debt and education. It noted that because of long-standing generational disparities in family wealth and income, Black and Hispanic borrowers tend to take on higher levels of debt and have a harder time paying it off than their white counterparts. Eliminating student debt, the report shows, would help keep the high cost of borrowing from exacerbating the racial wealth gap between the growing number of Americans seeking better employment through higher education. So, it's good for borrowers. It's actually good for the economy. It's good for racial justice. And it also costs less than Trump's stupid tax cuts and has more of an economic effect. So why don't we do it? Well, look, the answer is obvious. We already know the answer to that. There's no political will. What we need to do is we need to start asking our politicians why we are leaving millions of students behind under gigantic piles of debt, while we simultaneously give more and more and more to the top 1% in tax breaks. Ask them that question over and over. Hammer it into their heads if you have to. And believe me, you have to. But we have got to start changing our thinking and our framing on this issue of student loan debt, because it is hurting the economy. It is hurting people's lives. And unless we get a handle on this amount of debt that we have allowed our generation to take on, it's not going to lead to good things. It's going to lead to some very, very bad things in the future. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.